Jason Grace is one of my most favorite characters from the Heroes of Olympus series. I think that's pretty obvious with the amount of videos I've made on Jason over the years, and he's a pretty well-known character. However, some fans tend to overlook a lot about Jason's character, and in today's video, I made a list of the top 10 little-known facts about Jason Grace. These will be facts that we learned from both the Heroes of Olympus and the Trials of Apollo, so spoiler warning for those books. And with that said, let's get into it. Number 10. Jason's name origin. Jason's name seems like a pretty common one until you learn that Zeus or Jupiter actually named him Jason for a reason. Jason is named after the Jason in Greek mythology, specifically the one from the Argonauts or a group of heroes. In the myths, Jason and the Argonauts went on a journey to find the Golden Fleece, and this myth, along with the Odyssey, pretty much inspired Rick when writing The Sea of Monsters or the second book of PJO. One thing to note about the Argonaut Jason was that he was Hera's favorite demigod. Hera, or in her Roman form Juno, is the queen of the gods, and the wife of Jupiter, or Jason's father. In Greek mythology, Hera was known to absolutely hate any child that Zeus had outside of their marriage. Like, she would curse them, or intentionally try to catch Zeus cheating on her, and would be very vengeful. To quell his wife's anger after he cheated on her again, Zeus named Jason after her favorite demigod. Interestingly, this is kind of similar to what Zeus did with the famous Greek demigod Heracles, or in his Roman version, Hercules. And just a note, Heracles was the original name because it meant glory of Hera, and Zeus did this to make Hera less mad at Heracles. Aside from all of this, Jason's name is even more interesting when you realize that Jason is actually a Greek name that means healer. So it's kind of odd for the Riordanverse Jason because Jason in the Riordanverse is a Roman demigod and not a Greek one. Number 9. Jason was born on July 1. This is Jason's canon birthday, and we learn of this in the Mark of Athena, or the third book of the Heroes of Olympus. Interestingly, and in a bit of a tragic light, July 1 was also the day Percy Jackson and Annabeth Chase fell into Tartarus. So let me explain. Around this part of the Mark of Athena, we learn it's Jason's birthday when Jason and Piper went to a park for a picnic. On the same day, Annabeth manages to find the Athena Parthenos, and it led to that infamous Percy scene. Percy tries to get to Annabeth, but it's no use. They hang on together on a ledge, and he decided that they were staying together no matter what. And thus, Percy and Annabeth fell into Tartarus. This happened on Jason's birthday, and I honestly think that's really tragic. Also, July 1 is a pretty funny birthday for Jason, because July is known as Juno's or Hera's sacred month. So, added to his namesake earlier in his birthday, Jupiter really did everything just to make Hera happy. And one last thing to note on Jason's birthday is something I saw in the Riordan Wiki. There, they pointed out that Jason was born on July, and the rest of the months that came after it spelled the name Jason. So it's like July, August, September, October, November. Their first letters spell out Jason. Like, I don't know how they thought of that, but I thought I'd point it out over here. Number 8. Jason might not be dyslexic. Now, this is an interesting fact that I came across when making that Riordanverse misconceptions video. There, I mentioned how there are some demigods who don't have ADHD and dyslexia, and mentioned how Jason was an example of this. This is a really small fact that's hinted on in The Lost Hero, or the first book of the Heroes of Olympus series. There, Jason was seen reading a brochure, and he didn't seem to have a hard time reading it compared to the other demigods in the Riordanverse, so a lot have speculated that he might not be dyslexic. Number 7. Jason got into Camp Jupiter as early as 3 or 4 years old. One thing that confuses a lot of fans like me is the detail of Jason's tattoo from Camp Jupiter. There, you can clearly see 12 stripes on his arm, and each mark represents every year you've lived in Camp Jupiter. So this means that Jason lived in Camp Jupiter for 12 years. But that's kind of wild to consider because Jason was around 15 to 16 years old in the Heroes of Olympus and the Trials of Apollo, and he already had that many stripes. So if you do the math, that means Jason was around 3 or 4 years old when he got into Camp Jupiter. And even if that sounds kind of normal, it actually really isn't. To get into Camp Jupiter, each Roman demigod has to go through training with the wolf goddess Lupa, and from what we know in the series, it's a brutal process. Lupa and her pack of wolves train heroes, and Percy even mentioned in The Son of Neptune that you cannot show weakness or fear or else the wolves are going to eat you. So Jason enjoyed that kind of training when he was that young. He was practically raised by wolves because he was kidnapped by Juno when he was just 2 years old to train him in the wolf house. Like, this is just insane, but it's also pretty sad because Jason never really got a proper childhood. His life was dictated by training and rules, which is why he continued to live like that for a very long time before he was kidnapped again after the last Olympian. Number 6. Jason once disliked Nico. I think one of the sweetest friendships we got in the Riordanverse is Jason and Nico's relationship, but surprisingly, this didn't start out that way. Jason and Nico first met in the latter part of the Mark of Athena, and Jason did not have a good impression of who Nico was. Jason actually talked about how he disliked Nico after hearing Percy's story of how Nico once tricked Percy in the underworld from the last Olympian. From that point, Nico joined the rest of the Seven in their journey to defeat Gaia, and along the way, they needed to get the Ecclesian scepter. Nico knew how to get there, but nobody in the Argo 2 wanted to accompany Nico. Jason felt bad and decided that he was going to join Nico, but all throughout, Jason admitted that he was terrified of Nico. Jason even thinks that Nico was a pretty disturbing person for hanging out with the dead more than the living, but their mission to get the scepter changed everything. Jason and Nico were confronted by Cupid, or the Roman god of love. Cupid soon made Nico admit that Nico was in love with Percy, and it's a very vulnerable moment as Nico always hated himself for being gay, and he just came out to Jason. Jason, on the other hand, was stunned, but he realized just how much pain Nico was holding inside. Instead of judging or questioning Nico, Jason actually accepted Nico and even said that what Nico did was the bravest thing Jason saw. From that point, Jason and Nico became closer, even if Nico was reluctant to make friends at first. They bonded a lot, and Nico even accepted a hug from Jason by the blood of Olympus, which is a huge moment for Nico because he always hated physical contact before this. Ultimately, Jason and Nico didn't start out as friends, but they ended up being pretty close in the end. Number 5. Jason is nearsighted. If you go through Jason Gray's fan art, you'd notice that Jason almost always doesn't have glasses on. This is because their art usually depicts Jason before the Blood of Olympus, as he didn't have any glasses there. In the Blood of Olympus, or the 5th book of the Heroes of Olympus series, Jason, Piper, and Leo went to the god of medicine, Asclepius. Asclepius noticed that Jason was nearsighted, and he gave Jason some glasses, but it's pretty forgotten by fans because of the many fan art that shows him without the glasses. Number 4. Jason's similarities to Percy Jackson. Percy Jackson is the main character from his own series or PJO, and he's almost always compared to Jason Grace for a lot of similarities. Some of them include the following. Both Jason and Percy are skilled sword fighters, both were named after Greek heroes, like for Jason, it's the Jason from the Argonauts, and for Percy, it's the Greek hero Perseus. Both were pretty dense about love, as Jason didn't really take the hint that Reyna liked him romantically, while for Percy, he didn't notice Annabeth and Rachel like him for a long while as well. Both are children of the big three, as Jason is the son of Jupiter and Percy is the son of Poseidon. And lastly, both were praetors and resigned eventually. Number 3. Jason's many similarities to Luke Castellan. Luke Castellan was one of the main antagonists in the Percy Jackson and the Olympian series, and he actually looks so much like Jason Grace. For Disney Plus fans, this might surprise you because Luke Castellan there obviously doesn't look like Jason Grace, but in the book, Luke was actually pretty similar in physical description. Both Jason and Luke had blonde hair and blue eyes, and both were considered pretty attractive. The similarities do not end there, and the Riordan Wiki actually had a full section for it, so let's go through it. Both Luke and Jason were accomplished swordsmen, as Luke was dubbed as the best sword fighter in Camp Haplet, and Jason was also a very skilled swordsman. Both have been possessed by a being. For Luke, it's the Titan Lord Kronos, and for Jason, it's the Eidolons from the Mark of Athena. Both of them have histories with Thalia Grace. For Jason, it's obviously because Thalia is his sister, and for Luke, it's because Thalia and Luke were childhood best friends, and there's a few hints that they could have been more than that. Moving forward, both Luke and Jason are constantly compared to Percy Jackson. For Luke, a lot of people compare him to Percy because they are pretty similar in the sense that they represent two sides. Luke being a powerful demigod who gave in to his anger against the gods, that he joined the dark side, while Percy is also a powerful demigod who chose the good side despite his frustrations with the gods. On the other hand, Jason is constantly compared with Percy because both are the golden boys at their respective camps, and both are children of the big three who are powerful fighters. Aside from all of these, both Luke and Jason have defeated a Titan, and surprisingly, they both happen in The Last Olympian, or the last book of PJO. Luke killed Kronos when he sacrificed himself, and Jason defeated the Titan Krios in Mount Authors. Interestingly, both Luke and Jason had a mother who went insane. For Luke, his mother May Castellan went insane after trying to be the host of the Oracle of Delphi, while Jason's mother was a known actress turned drunkard after Jupiter left her. Lastly, both Luke and Jason sacrificed themselves to save people. For Luke, he killed himself to stop Kronos and save the universe, and for Jason, he sacrificed himself to save Apollo, Meg, and Piper in the Burning Maze. Number 2. Jason was the first demigod to see a god's godly form and live. Now, this is a moment that I don't see many fans mention, mainly because a lot of fans overlook the lost hero, so let me explain. Around this time, Hera was kidnapped by Gaia, and Jason, Piper, and Leo went on a quest to save her. This led to the Battle of the Wolf House as Jason, Piper, and Leo took down giants and freed Hera. In the heat of that battle, Leo managed to free Hera from her prison, and Hera then released her godly form. And one thing to note about a god's godly form is the fact that you should never look at them when it happens. When a mortal sees a god's godly form, they'll instantly die. However, when Hera released her godly form, Jason was just knocked down by a giant, and he wasn't able to fully look away like Piper or Leo. This made Jason actually die for a moment, but Piper McLean, or Jason's girlfriend at the time, refused to accept this. Piper tried bringing Jason back to life by using her charm speak powers, and after a while of this, Jason actually lives. I know that a lot of people judge Rick for doing this because it is pretty hard to believe that charm speak saved Jason somehow, because he was literally dead and he came back to life. Like, there's no added explanation as to how Jason lived after that in The Lost Hero, but we kind of get an explanation in The Son of Neptune. In The Son of Neptune, they introduced the fact that the dead don't stay dead because the doors of death were opened by Gaia's forces. This meant that the souls of the dead could just walk through the doors and into the world of the living, and this was most probably the reason why Jason woke up even if he was dead. It makes more sense, and I think Piper's charm speak was just the cherry on top to really get Jason back in the scene. And last but not the least, number 1. Jason never loved Reyna romantically. If you want a more in-depth review of what I'm going to explain, you can check out my other video on the Jason, Piper, Reyna love triangle analysis. I'll have it linked down below, but anyway, as I said, Jason never loved Reyna romantically. A lot of people think that Jason and Reyna were a much better pairing compared to Jason and Piper because of the many issues that Jason and Piper had in the series, especially because it led to their breakup. However, I went through the relationship in that video and realized that Jason and Reyna were not a better option, and let me explain. We all know that Jason and Reyna were childhood best friends in Camp Jupiter, and it was clear that Reyna developed a crush on Jason. Reyna was convinced that she was in love with Jason, even hinting to Percy in The Son of Neptune that she and Jason could have had a future together. Jason acknowledges this future in the House of Hades, but for a long time, Jason was oblivious to Reyna's feelings. He had no idea that she was in love with him, and was too dense to see that Piper was jealous of Reyna in the Mark of Athena. This latter part might just be Jason being Jason, because he doesn't really know how to take a hint about romance, kind of like Percy, but this might also be a hint that Jason never loved Reyna romantically. We finally get confirmation of this in the House of Hades. So to give proper context, Jason sees Reyna in his dream, and he feels guilty that he saw her because around this time, Reyna had just left Camp Jupiter to follow the Argo 2 on a deadly quest. So I'll just read to you guys what Jason thinks. Upon seeing her, Jason felt an incredible pang of guilt. He'd let her believe that they had a future together. He had never been in love with her, and he hadn't let her on exactly, but he also hadn't shut her down. So, did you guys hear that? He had never been in love with her. Jason felt guilty, because now he knows about her true feelings for him, and he feels horrible because he thinks he let her on and forced her to deal with war. So ultimately, Jason saw Reyna as a friend instead, and not a romantic partner. And those are all the facts I'll be going through in this video. So how about you? What do you think of Jason Grace? Let me know in the comments down below.